This podcast was created as a part of Podcast Lab by India Film Project in association with Anchor by Spotify.
Writing has helped me in a number of ways, but the single most important benefit of writing has been its effect on my thought process. As I write, I'm able to think better and vice versa. Simple writing is often the result of deep thought, and I've seen the benefit of a more structured thought process, which I credit to writing, both at work and outside. The journey of transferring thoughts into words in a way that does the most justice to the truth of your thoughts is a hard and rewarding process. There's always going to be a difference between our raw thoughts and the actual articulation. Another reason behind why I write is to build the habit of consistency. I believe that little things done regularly add up to have a compounded effect in the long term. Showing up twice a week with an intention to say something hasn't always been effortless for me. I can recall multiple instances where I've stared at my blank screen for a long time before I could write down a sensible sentence, even. Sometimes I've delayed writing till later, only to say something that seemed extremely preachy in hindsight. What I've come to realize is that the force of resistance is always going to be there. Consistency helps you fight the resistance better, but never fully eliminate it.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Closet Writer Chronicles. I'm your host Sangeeta, aka the Moody Marshmallow. You just heard our guest for today, Ashwin Chhabria. Ashwin currently works at Microsoft Canada, and he's previously worked with organizations like Goldman Sachs, Deloitte, and McKinsey & Company. He's also been an entrepreneur. Ashwin's also a blogger and podcaster, having produced and hosted podcasts like News on the Go and In Conversation with Ashwin. In today's episode, we talk about his journey with reading, writing, and podcasting, with some really great recommendations thrown in. And we just have a really wholesome conversation about life and what it's taught him. Hey Ashwin, welcome to the Closet Writer Chronicles. It's so good to have you on the show.
I'm excited to be here, Sangeeta. Thanks for having me.
So I think just kind of diving right in, I was going through your blog recently, and there were, I think, about 78 web pages of content. And I believe you've been writing since 2015 or so. And I was just doing this very rough calculation, and I realized you must have written over 500 pieces, considering you write twice a week. And since you've been doing it since 2015, that's a crazy amount of content to be putting out. So, I think my first question is, how did this journey start? How did you get into blogging? And what have these past couple of years been like with writing and blogging?
Wow, that's a heavily packed, loaded question. I love it. There's so many bits to it, right? So, I think the first thing about blogging is it's a commitment that I made that I will write 2 days a week despite whatever happens, and then I'll tell you the reason that came into place itself, right? But once I made that decision, I feel like then it's just about acting on it. So the resistance to that extent is reduced. So a lot of people uh, go ahead and go with the flow with some things. I'm not so much of going with the flow. I used to be a lot of going with the flow person, but I felt like there's a good benefit in putting systems in place that help you show up, right? And to that extent, you're not exerting that muscle more than necessary. So once I've made that decision of writing 2 days a week, that's not negotiable. And then you somehow put something out. It's letting off yourself the hook that allows you that excuse to not show up, right? So, I mean, that's something that I've built up over time. It hasn't come easy, and I feel like I'm just starting to realize the reality of that statement. I used to speak that statement a couple of years ago, but I feel like I'm feeling the benefits of it now. And that's when they say, right, discipline is a long game. Like, I really think so, because for the first couple of years that I started on this journey, I really didn't see as much immediate uh, rewards, but then the rewards started trickling up, and um, and then they compound, and a part of blogging is also compounding. And to draw back to my story and what got me into writing and reading itself is in fact, writing started just about the same time I started reading. In fact, I started reading in 2013, 2014. So it's been 7 to 8 years of reading. But it's, as a kid, I never read. I was always on the streets playing football, cricket with my neighbors. My mom would pull me by the collar. Where's your homework, right? So I'm like, oh yeah, I need to show up with a lot of homework. So we'll sit the night through and finish homework. And she'd be like, you're a terrible kid. So I would give her that day in and day out. So, and then I got to a point where I started focusing too much on studies. So, and then I became like a nerd for a couple of years, and then I went back to being playful. But the books never figured in the region. And then I went to this workshop. A friend of mine, he's a mentor slash friend, and he spoke about some myths that he busted through his reading sessions, and he was very. It was one of the early ins into reading for me. A lot of people used to tell me read, and I used to find it boring advice. But at this workshop, he really broke it down and said it's a great way to digest learnings of people who spent years together learning something that's already out there.
Right.
And so self-development was the key motivation, because a lot of things in my life weren't in place at that time. And this workshop kind of it didn't happen at that time. It happened a year before, but I just thought back at one of those moments in these 3 months of figuring my life out, that, hey, someone told me reading's going to help, and right now I need help. Right. So it was basically, I didn't know what to do. And so I just took to books. And for me, that's why books are so much more than just pages. And they just feel like the solution to most things. And if there is a problem, there is a book about it. And I really believe in that. So, feeding your own curiosity is a journey that is probably endless if you are curious about things. And thankful for me, I have too many questions. So I'm always trying to find out something more. And I don't know what that will lead into with no intention. It's just with the intention to get that curiosity fed, if I may. So anyway, long story short, I started writing and reading because of the intent to be better in life, to do better, to make something happen. So it's very self-development focused. When I was reading, I wanted to share something with people, or I don't know, whatever the intention was, and we chat more about it. But I think I'm rambling. So what was your question again?
It's fine. You gave me quite a bit in that one answer, which I think I will like. No. So my question was, how did you start blogging, and what has the journey been like since you've been doing it for 5 years?
Yeah. So I mean, I told you most of the growth story, right? Like how it's it started from once a month. I used to write a piece once a month, and then it became once in 2 weeks.
Okay.
And then it became once in a week, and then it became twice a week. So I think for the first year was once in a month.
Okay.
For the second year was once in 2 weeks, and I think from the third year it became, and for the last 1.5 years I've been writing twice a week. So that's why it just didn't start twice a week, right? I had to gradually step into it. And that's another thing that with habits, when you pick them up, don't front load the efforts, right? Just start easy, start slow. So that's mostly how the growth has been. And in terms of how it actually started, right? I feel like it was this YouTube talk that I was watching of Cal Newport. He's a blogger. He's a super cool guy. He's off the grid. He's you can link him in the show notes. He's not on any kinds of social media, but he writes a really nice blog. It's just called calnewport.com. And he's written this book called Deep Work. And I was watching his summary of the book itself, and I got very interested. No, actually, it was so good they can't ignore you. So it was his first book, and I was like, I don't know what to write about. And so I started watching these YouTube videos and started summarizing those YouTube videos in text, because I felt like that's a great way to digest what you've learned, because writing is a great way to understand. And it also was giving me a topic to write on because I didn't know what to write about. So it started with that. It started with just the pure intention of building this as a habit, because back to the workshop where, reading Rohan, this shout out to Rohan if he's listening. So he's the guy who held the workshop. And and he essentially said, read 30 minutes a day. Right?
Okay.
Don't do more than that, because, or don't do less than that. It's enough commitment to show that you care, but not too much that you're going to be unsustainable with it. So yeah, start with that, and then the reading and writing bit was complementary, and the writing bit happened with just the intention to build something as a habit. Just do something every month, and try to build it up and see your growth. So now when I look back at what I wrote 4 years ago, I laugh at myself, but
Yeah.
it's a good sign, right? Because you feel like you've evolved. Sometimes you haven't, and then you're like, "Yo, what have you been up to?"
Yeah,
So
no, for sure. I completely resonate with that because even, I mean, I've only been writing seriously for about a year now. And even just in this 1 year of me writing, I can look back at pieces I've written, say, about a year ago, and I can see the growth. I can see the difference. And I'm literally cringing at pieces I have written, even if it's not been such a long time period, because and even though I'm cringing, I'm also thinking that, oh, I guess this is a good sign because it means I have learned and I have grown and hopefully I'm improving and becoming better. So hats off to you for cultivating this habit. And
no, 100%. I think I have to pause and say that you've actually inspired me in this department as well, because you share a lot of content yourself with your poetry and with your writings, and you support a lot of people who are trying to do the hustle, or at least trying to build a side project. So that's really cool. It does take the village to kind of get this the whole side project or the side hustle culture out, right?
yeah.
It's not yeah. Anyway, really appreciate that bit that you do. So
No, thank you so much. Thank you so much for saying that. It's very sweet of you. Um, but just, kind of coming back to writing and reading. And I know you said you started out with, writing about the books you were reading. But interestingly, you also, I think, write about a lot of life related things, or even, personal experiences. So I wonder, and this is something, the reason I'm asking is because you see a lot of quote unquote influencers these days, or people who are just, I guess, posting every single thing about their life. And I'm not saying you post every single thing, but you do, I guess, have these thoughts sometimes about, oh, like I want to talk about, and it can be very simple concepts. You're sometimes talking about, oh, waiting, or, letting go of something, pursuing something, consistency. And you talk about it with regard to your own personal experiences, which I love. But I do wonder, do you ever sometimes feel that maybe you're overexposing yourself with the content you put out? Do you feel like, oh no, maybe I'm being too vulnerable here. Maybe I shouldn't put out too much. I don't want maybe unnecessary attention for maybe
yeah,
certain opinions I'm putting out or saying. I'm just wondering,
yeah.
does that ever
No,
cross
that's
your mind?
fair. 100%. You're super conscious when you share stuff about your own life. And for a long time in my writing, if you see that the personal experience sharing only started recently,
Right.
and in fact, it's not been something that I started out with, and I feel like there's still a guard that I have between what I write and what I experience, and I'm not being fully disclosury in that aspect. I try to keep it to the learnings, and I feel like that's a fine balance. I feel like,
Right.
but giving context is helpful. So when you're
Definitely.
that's just for the reader, right? But for your own self as well. So there's two parts to this. For myself, I actually don't like to think about being judged about my writing, and
Definitely.
I don't care.
Mhm.
That's the truth, right? So
Right.
I like it that people talk about it. It's great if people tell me that they like something, and that'll make my day. But if I'm not saying that I love criticism as well, because then that improves you as a writer.
Yeah.
But then when somebody is, when you're just trying to write, and when the intentions are just to kind of build that as a habit, and if you
Exactly.
have personal context you want to give, I don't judge myself.
Right.
I feel like it's a canvas, and you do need to be free. So I don't weigh too much into, okay, whatever I say, uh, that's not true. So there's the guard as well, right? I'm not
Right.
exposing myself fully, because I'm a little conscious. I'm not comfortable with telling people exactly the experience, right? And to that extent, a lot of people, in fact, have told me that, hey, you don't share too much, but you don't make it too personal. You're just sticking to the
Hmm.
learnings. So I'm like, okay. So that's why I feel like over the years I've started to have more personal context so that the
Okay.
learnings make sense, because sometimes it's just a bunch of learnings and that doesn't really help, right?
Yeah.
And you're right about I write a lot about what I think. It's either one of the two things. I write either about what I'm reading or about what I'm thinking, and most of this ends up being in the area of business, psychology,
Right.
and sometimes tech even. And I'm starting to do more of that. So this is my verbal commitment to say, hey, I do want to write more about tech, and so just putting it out there. So that's another exercise you can use too, and that's why I post stuff, because
Hmm.
I at least started with that intention that public commitments are strong, they keep you on check. But now I think it would happen. I'm confident that would happen even if the public forum did not exist. Um, but it does definitely today. It's difficult to talk life without social media. It's just I'm not saying it's a part of you, but there's so much to it that influences our behavior. And if you're self-aware, you'll know why you do what you do. Anyway, hoping that influence reduces and you're doing things for the real reason and less for the frills. But yeah, we live and we learn.
No, but no, because I think it's amazing that you are able to kind of be vulnerable through your writing as well, because it's not easy to do. First of all, it's very scary to put your writing out there, because when you put something out in a public domain, you know it's going to get judged regardless, good or bad. It is going to get some opinion of some nature. And then, to kind of put your guard down and say, hey, okay, why don't I share my life experiences also? Because you never know who's going to relate, and it may actually help someone. In a lot of cases, it does also. So it's very brave of you to do that. But I mean, I asked this again, like I said, because I know a lot of people do have this fear of putting things out, because you never know what the internet is going to give you for something you've said or posted or whatever. But no, I mean, more
That's so
credit
true.
to
What
you.
what about you? Have you experienced criticism that has kind of put you down, and not, or have you
Hmm.
shared too much that you felt criticized about, or do you not share too much at all?
So okay, so I started a newsletter earlier this year,
Oh
and
yeah,
yeah, so it's
you
called.
should. Yeah, so I love that, by the way.
Thank
Yeah, it's
you.
called it's called
The
the
Moody Mail.
Moody newsletter,
The
the
Moody
Moody Mail.
Mail,
Yeah,
yes, it's on Substack.
nice,
Listeners, please subscribe if you're interested. Shameless plug, but no.
100%. Yeah, I'll link it in the
But
show notes. And yeah, so yeah, you do okay. But that's been a more recent phenomenon.
definitely. So I think that's when I just decided, okay, what if I share a newsletter every month where I talk about, content I've consumed and just generally things I'm doing professionally, but also, just thoughts I have in life and maybe my own personal experiences and whatnot. Um, because I realized even when I was writing the first newsletter, if it's going to be a recap of my month, I can't separate my personal life from it. And the way I wanted that newsletter to be was almost like this monthly mail you get from a friend who's away. So almost like a pen pal, but in this case, my identity. So yeah. So I just couldn't separate the two. And I was like, you know what? It's okay if I feel like putting something from my personal life here, I'll share it. And initially, I wasn't like, I didn't get any criticism, but I know there was this one specific newsletter I shared where I had taken a break for, I think, 2 or 3 months. And I just sent it in two parts. And I shared the reason why, I wasn't able to send it, because I was going through a really low phase. And I spoke about work life balance and not exactly depression, but mental health in general. And I spoke about, menstruation and PMS. And there were a lot of women who actually reached out to me after that, which I think really touched me in a sense that, wow, I never realized that this is the power of words, you know where you put something out and then suddenly you have people reaching out and saying, hey, thank you so much for sharing this, or I relate so much to what you're saying. And the only reason I put it out is because it was a reality for me. It still is a reality for me. And also just the fact that it doesn't get spoken about much. And I felt like, okay, I think this is something that needs to be spoken about. And I won't lie, I did have a little bit of fear because I didn't know how it was going to be received. Granted, it's 2021, but you never know like how people might react. But people were very nice about it, and I got some really like sweet comments for what I had written. So yeah, so that's been
That's
my
so
experience
nice.
now. Yeah.
Love it. Love that answer. Yeah. I think um, the building the community bit, right? Writing allows you to achieve that because then it's a great way to just communicate. Good old writing. I tell, you know, Ashna, it's difficult to get used to the word wife, but yeah, we're married now. So it's, I tell her that sometimes the best communications we've had is when we've typed things out, and it's not when I mean, conversations, yes, but what words do, and when you read and when you reflect, it's a great way to stay in touch with yourself as well. So journaling, right? It's such a helpful way to visualize things that you're thinking, or even write things that sometimes you don't even know what you're thinking. And a lot of us have to first articulate that for ourselves before we do it for the world. And I think that's a helpful exercise. Anyway, I'll stop preaching.
No, no, that's fine. I should. That was a very, I don't know if it was a heavy conversation, but I think it was an important conversation. So I'm glad we had it. But just kind of coming back to reading and writing. Um, so I know you said you only started reading about 7, 8 years ago, and you also started writing around the same time. So then, I wonder, and I know a lot of people have different opinions about this, but I want to know your opinion on this. Do you think it's important to be a reader to be a writer?
Um, yes, there's no question about that. I think reading and writing go hand in hand. I mean, if this reminds me of Theodore Roosevelt. I think it was him, who's I think the 26th president of the United States. He said, "Not every reader is a leader, but every leader is a reader," right? So it's mostly, and that kind of puts things. I like the part of that because it's super pithy, it's short, but it tells you that hey, uh, the only common thing between most successful people is that they read, and there's a reason for it because um, they've realized, or I believe that that's one perspective, and I think for me personally, writing would be more difficult if I didn't read. So the rhythm of writing happens and gives you more variety to talk about because reading gives you more things to think about. So it's a constant flywheel, right? I think it's a symbiotic relationship that reading and writing have in my life, and I like to do both of each. So you consume enough and you create enough. That balance is so important because the consumption and creation balance is important, and but both foster each other because if you can't consume, you can't create. If you can't create, I mean, I don't want to fall into the trap of words here, but you get it.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I do. I kind of agree with that. So I think I'm from a slightly more hybrid school of thought, I guess. I think
Yeah.
to write, you don't necessarily have to read. And I'll tell you why. Because I think to be a writer, you just need to be perceptive. That's the first thing. And I'm saying this is purely just to write. If anyone can write. So even if you're someone who suddenly observes something in life or even your surroundings, or even if you're like, say, someone who just watches film or listens to audio, like listens to podcasts, and you're still consuming content, you're still being perceptive to, things around you, to information. And if you have the ability to absorb, say, certain thoughts and information, I think you do have the ability to still put that out. Through writing or any other medium. The reason I say writing, because I feel like writing is the basis for most of those, other forms of content, be it again film or podcast or whatever. You do script, you do write it down first before executing it. That's the first thing you do with your idea usually. But also, having said that, I think to be a good writer, it's important to read, because reading is what also teaches you technique, and you can learn so much in terms of, you know um, again, like you said, just different thoughts, different learnings, even the way they've like written things down and articulated themselves. So I think I'm more of that school of thought. But no, I completely agree with the fact that reading is important. You can't take it away, for sure.
Yeah, no, I think that's a helpful nudge, because I don't mean to be extremely black and white in my answer, that no, if you don't read,
Yeah,
you're
of
not
course.
right at all. I think that, as you said, you said it better than I could, that to be good at writing, you need to read. So I feel like that helps. It aids it in a beautiful way, because you find different styles, different genres, and you take the best bits of all the authors that you like subconsciously even. So yeah. Anyway.
No, for sure. But I think then also the other thing is, since you have been writing twice a week now, how do you keep up the consistency? Because I do imagine there are days where you're not feeling it, and I think this is where my question of, say, writer's block versus burnout comes in. Because when do you know, when you're sitting to write, that you're facing writer's block, or if you're genuinely just exhausted and you decide that, okay, I need to take a break now, or then you just say, no, this is just a block. I just need to sit here in front of my laptop, or whatever, and just type out whatever I need to. How do you make that differentiation? Just generally, what is your take on writer's block versus burnout?
Sure. Yeah, again, it's not a black and white answer for me. It's a little more nuanced. Um, I, I think that, there's seasons of writing intensity that everybody goes through. There's
Hmm.
periods in my year that you will see that I write longer pieces. I have more time to write. And there'll be a couple of weeks, couple of months, even sometimes, that you're not very good with you've not done enough, right?
Hmm.
So you know that, but you're okay because you want to put something out there. So it's um, so overall, I think I'd love for things to be super consistent on a weekly basis, but the truth is that it's not, especially with the job, etc. It's been new. I'm new in my role, so
Hmm.
a lot of my time is going there. So the past couple of weeks I haven't been very good, um, and I stopped criticizing myself for that. I realized that it's just the rhythm of the year, and you'll
Yeah.
figure it out. So don't be so hard on yourself. That's number one. Don't be hard on yourself, because it's okay. Make a commitment. If you can't show up, don't beat yourself up. Try to do better next time, right? And I think with writer's block, there's the resistance, right? Everybody has resistance to do anything that is involving any mental or physical effort. Like if it's exercise or writing or reading, your mind is, or your amygdala or your lizard brain or whatever, is gonna try to be comfortable, sneak in, go get cozy. So it's
Right.
about listening to that voice and telling it that, shut up, I need to do what I
Yeah.
need to do. So Seth Godin says this, right? The lizard brain just keeps talking, and you need to ask
Yeah.
it to shut up when it needs to. So I feel like when it's easier said than done. I mean, I'm not, there's no voice that you're talking to, and you're not like, hey, shut up, and you're done.
Yeah.
Your writer's block is boom, it's gone. You can write. No, that doesn't happen. But knowing that helps, because the resistance actually never goes away.
Hmm.
Um, the second bit is, I think, breaks in routine are also helpful.
Right.
I was in the US for a month, and I was traveling states, and I was writing, and the things I was writing about was more based off my travels, and it gave me a different perspective to my whole thing. So you pick up another
Hmm.
way of thinking about your content. So, but don't do that too often, because embracing the routine is also a part of the phenomenon. Is right. So
Right.
you need to stick to a routine to be able to show up, but also don't be so obsessed with it that you're chained like a dog,
Yeah.
right? It's about maintaining that balance and saying, okay, I want to write about things that I feel are meaningful, and there is going to be the block, there is going to be the resistance, but you got to somehow show up. And those days you cheat, you put a quote in and you say you like that quote, and that makes a post. But whatever, man. Like, you got to just keep the flywheel going, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's, yeah. And Seth Godin says this. Stephen Pressfield, actually, he writes a lot on resistance. I love the guy. He just puts things straight and simple. He says, this is the human body. We evolve, yes, but the few parts of us are fundamentally screwed. Realizing that helps. And then working from there helps. So if people want to read more on resistance, Stephen Pressfield is a great person to start with.
Yeah, for sure. No, but
Yeah.
no, I do agree, because I know writer's block is something I struggle with quite a bit sometimes, because I end up doing, because now with the podcast and even just certain freelance work and personal projects I'm taking up, I do find it difficult
You're
sometimes.
writing so much more than me. Like, it's insane. Like, your newsletters are so nicely laid out, and then you also do your poetry, and you're kind of creating this podcast. So that's amazing. Yeah, you should
I'm
tell
really
us,
trying.
how do you get through the blog?
I don't. That's the thing. Because
Mm,
I feel like, and this was a conversation I actually had in episode 1 with Megha Vasudevan, who's also a writer, and she's primarily a graphic
I
designer. But
listened to that episode. I really liked it. Yeah,
yeah, so
yeah.
we spoke about
I like
creative.
the bit about we spoke about the Alice in Wonderland book in the
Yeah,
beginning.
yes, we
Yeah,
did.
and I was so jealous. I'm like, oh, I missed all of that in my life. Anyway.
No, so we were talking about creative burnout. And, she said that usually when you are going through a burnout, because when you are a creative professional, so to speak, and if you're writing 24, you're essentially doing something you love in your personal time professionally. So then you kind of end up doing it 24/7. And that can really cause burnout. Now, that's a different level of, burnout, so to speak. And she was saying basically, if you go through it, just don't do it. Do everything else but that, because you need to distract your mind. You need to take a break from it and then come back, because you never know where else you're going to get inspiration from. You just maybe need a prompt to help you kind of, ignite that fire once more. And I completely agree with her, because there are times, I have beaten myself up for not being able to produce content. And I've had to like stop myself and say, hey, you know, you've been doing this for a while now. Maybe you need to take a break. Maybe you're just getting drained out. Maybe your creative stamina is a little low now. So, take a step back, do something else, come back to it later. So that's definitely a challenge. So I think with me, that's how I do it, hoping to get better at dealing with it, because I'm still pretty new at this. I've only been doing this for about a year. So yeah, I mean, fingers crossed. Hopefully I'll get better as the days go by. But I know
No,
you're
you're doing so well.
extremely, no, but you're extremely consistent, because, and I've told you this before, because even I know you write a newsletter, which I read, and I love that you're so consistent. And each time I see your newsletter, Ashwin, I'm literally thinking, oh my God, I have not sent my newsletter this month. I have not read
Oh
as
my
many
God.
books.
And I think we discussed this before. Every time I get yours, I'm like, should I need to send mine? Yeah, no, it's good. It's good. It's one. I- I'm not sure the consistency is a consequence of um, the effort, or it's just the decision to stay consistent. I feel like a lot of it is that, just don't give yourself too many excuses to fall out of it. Like, just put it on
Right.
the calendar. That helps. And that being said, like, I still don't send it every month, as like I started last year, but I gave it a year's break. So I've
Mm.
not been so consistent as much as I'd like to either. And the truth is that you just try to be better, and
Yeah.
just kind of keep at it, and then you'll keep getting there. Yeah, but reading list, the newsletter Sangeeta is talking about, by the way, guys, is we show noted below, and it's just about the books I read in the month, and I summarize them and send it out to a bunch of people. I think I have about 300 subscribers now, but like 60 to 80 people from that open the email. Anyway, so that's basically, summarizing 3 or 4 books that I read in the month, sometimes just one book, or sometimes saying, hey, I didn't read anything, this is a podcast I listened to. So it's 1 month, one email a month, and it helps me stay consistent more than anything. It just is a decision to, again, one of those things that, okay, I have to send this book list out, then I have to read, then I have to say something, then it may sound like I'm calculating too many things, but honestly, it works for me. And once you just have that in your head, like, you kind of, reading and writing are key, and running as well. So I like to keep systems for these, and I make sure I'm doing enough of it, because it actually makes me happy. So I realize
Mhm.
that, and then you make a rule for doing things you want to be
Yeah, for
happy for.
sure.
Yeah,
And that's the most
yeah,
important thing. I think as long as you are happy and you're like, okay, I'm satisfied with what's going on. I'm being productive. I'm being happy at my, own pace and what's working for me. Then I think that's the most important thing, you know. Um,
so
so,
true. It's so simple, but so difficult to do.
oh, for sure. I think that's adulting. I think more than adulting, that's just life in general, I feel. But yeah, I
True.
think just sort of, um, going on the reading tangent, because I know you do read a lot of nonfiction more than fiction, but I was curious to know, what are some stories that may have possibly impacted you? It could be fiction or even, from your nonfiction books or just other content you've consumed. What are, some things that have really impacted you?
Fiction wise, actually, fiction has inspired me more than nonfiction, believe it or not. I've read a few fictions that have hit me harder than most nonfictions I've read. This is Illusions by Richard Bach, Jonathan Livingston Seagull by, I forget the author's name, but it's and then Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse, the German version. The stories I think that I remember from reading books is more philosophical. So I love the JLS story, by the way. It's the seagull that is in a tribe of seagulls. Seagull is just a bird that can fly, but not higher than a particular limit. But it's essentially these seagulls together were flying. But there's one seagull who figured out that hey, he can fly higher, or he or she can fly higher, and then I mean, let's say it's a he tells the bunch of seagulls that hey, I found this way, do you want to join me? And none of the seagulls agree, and it's insane how he is trying to push. I might be spoiling it for the readers, but I'll try not to. So that story is hot because eventually what he did was he kind of brought a lot of seagulls and helped them realize their potential, and that's insane because it's all in the mind, and they figured out everything was in their mind, and they could actually go higher than they thought. So that's one story that's fun. Another one I like is Night Train to Lisbon. That's a fiction.
Okay.
It's just about a professor in Lisbon who travels and falls in love with this lady in Sweden, and she's Swiss. And just the whole story is so fascinating. It's by Pascal Mercier. It's a phenomenal book. And yeah, another nonfiction I like is Stephen Covey's Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. His stories. There's a lot of stories that he plugs in now and then, but JLS, Johnson Livingston Seagull, and Pascal Mercier's Night Train to Lisbon. There's these stories that keep hitting me, and I like it, and that's another reason why I read, because I like stories, and then that's why I like fiction. So I used to do one fiction for every four nonfictions, but now I'm doing one fiction for every two nonfictions. So in a year, I'm at least reading six fictions that way. So I recently read The Vanishing Half by Britt, Bennett,
Right.
phenomenal book, and now I'm reading Anxious People by Fredrik Backman. So
Oh, that's supposed to be a really good book. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's lying in my bookshelf. I actually haven't gotten to it, but I read like 20 pages.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
No,
fun.
but that's amazing. And great book recommendations, which I'm definitely going to note down and look them up and see what I want to read from that for sure. But no, it always makes me so happy just to kind of hear people talk about, stories that have really stayed with them and impacted them. I love listening to this. So thank you so much for sharing about
No,
these
of
books.
course. I'm glad, and this I say that there's one story that exists, and then there's the story we tell ourselves. This is the story I'm telling myself. This is how I perceive, reality as of day, and there's so much I'm missing, and we're all missing. So that's
Yeah.
the only, yeah. Anyway, but thanks for giving me an opportunity to get better with my own narrative. So
No, thank you so much. But I think, okay, just shifting gears a bit now.
yeah,
So I know you mentioned this in the beginning where you said you weren't going through a very good period in between. You're going through a rough patch, so to speak. Um, you and I have had a personal conversation about this, and I think it's very inspiring because the way you've come out of it and where you are today, because it's not easy for anyone to get themselves out of any kind of low phase. It takes a lot of strength and courage. Um, I think it'd be really great to hear you share your story because I think, especially in today's day and age, where people only show the good things that happen, the amazing things that happen, and that's fine. But no one really goes into what a person may have gone through to get to where they are or to reach the amazing thing that happened to them. Because the overnight success is not always an overnight success. There is a period of turmoil and, sort of hardship that has been gone through to reach there, so to speak. So would love to hear, your story.
No, of course. Thanks, Sangeeta. I think you're being too kind here. I personally think you know the disclaimer is that you try your best, and and then kind of leave the rest. And a lot of things have to play in favor for things to work out. So um, uh, with that, I mean, with that knowledge, I feel like the low point in my life was that period, right? When I said I was figuring it out. And I also think that was the high point, because that's when I realized that, hey, I need to take control of my life. And if that didn't happen, then I would just kind of let life happen to me. I, I quit a job. I quit chartered accountancy. I didn't know what I was going to do with my life. Also, um, I think it was a rough breakup. There was just basically my mom and dad thought I was working, and then I was at Deloitte for I was working with Deloitte, but I quit for 3 months, and my parents didn't know. So there was a lot going on, and that's why struggle periods are actually the best periods, because you learn so much from it, and that's you kind of level up, if I may. And so that helped me take control of life and know that, hey, there's nobody else that's gonna you got to back yourself up. And that led to the nonfiction, right? So I think that the struggles are, everybody has struggles, just different kinds.
Right.
For me, it may be family. For me, it may be growing up in an atmosphere that wasn't so abundant. It was just very fixated that, yeah, this is the way we do things, and that's it, right? And get married by this age, stay here, I do this job, and I hated it. And then
Right.
and even working in a country like India, I love India, but the work culture in India is has to see a lot of improvement. And
Right.
I'm hoping to I influenced it as much as I could while I was there, and I'm
Right.
hoping to do more of it eventually. And the dream is that you work with people, not for people.
Hmm.
Right? And so that's the lens that a lot of developing nations are still getting to, the working with people instead of
Right.
for. And I think that's another bit that the struggle period of professionalism. I felt like there was a lot of things I didn't like about the way I was being treated, right?
Hmm.
And so just both of those put together, you realize that, hey, you can do better, and you can, I mean, not about better, you ask yourself what you want,
Yeah.
right? And then take that hard decision of pursuing what you want, because there's no use of trying to be in the herd when you don't like it. If you like it, then great, then you know have
Hmm.
fun. But if you don't like it, then don't go with it, right? So
Right.
then step out and join another one, if that's yours, right? So we're just finding a tribe, and realizing, okay, yeah, and it's such a constant process, because every 2-3 years you can be wanting to be in a different tribe, right?
Hmm.
And
That's
and
true.
hence you have to restock, and that's why it's constant learning. And I feel like, and the last bit, that is the most important bit, is having fun with it. I
Yeah.
think the struggles that you get back to your question about what struggles did I have. It was family, it was professional. It was both making me feel a little claustrophobic,
Hmm.
and beyond that point, you just find a way to get out. Like it's almost like desperate times call for desperate measures. You
Right.
just find a way to way to make your and I don't mean to say it in a very disrespectful way to my
Of course.
situation. Then I appreciated that. I mean, there's so many things that went right for me, but there's a few things that weren't, and I wanted to fix them. And I said, hey, I'm taking control, and I'm doing what it takes to make that happen. But that's one part of the story. The second bit is things have to work out. So
Right.
it's a patience game as well, and a lot of things that may seem great on the outside are not actually, right. Everybody has their own struggles, and that's just realizing. And each one of every person listening to this probably has their own. And so it's just about identifying that, not being bogged down by it, but instead using it as fuel to do better, or
Definitely.
to kind of just change your reality, and just be prouder of yourself. So that's that's just my lens to it. So
Yeah,
yeah,
and you should be very proud of yourself because you've come a really long way. So I have a
thank
lot
you,
of
Sangeeta. You're
respect.
kind. You're too kind. You're too kind.
No, but I do.
But
I have a
yeah,
lot of respect for you, and for
and
where you
comes
are
and
today.
this mentality. No, thank you. This mentality and this mindset is not mine, right? It's popular, and I feel like a lot of people in my own circle have that, and you kind
Mm,
of get inspired by just the mindset of people around you as well. So it's about asking if the abundance mentality is around people with you. Yeah, and sometimes it's not. Then you influence it. Don't try to leave your people behind, right?
yeah,
It's about lifting people together, like
true.
move the wheel together, right? It's and that's a part of the whole thing. The abundance mentality is so crucial, and for me to have found it, it feels like I struck gold. And then
Mm,
it's not really too expensive. It's not even, yeah, it's not, it doesn't cost money.
right.
So but mindsets are the hardest to build, even
Definitely.
more than earning money. So you kind of, but it's possible, and it's in your control. So yeah, I sound like an obsessive person, so I'll stop.
No, not at all. I think that's much needed. People definitely need to hear this for sure. No matter how hard things get, I think you will. I know this is easier said than done, but you will eventually find your silver lining, and you'll get through it somehow. That's what I believe in, and I
Yeah,
know.
just keep trying.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, just as they say, as the going gets tough, the tough get going. So
Yes,
just be as strong as you can and get through it, and I'm sure you will. um
love that.
but yeah, I think now shifting to a slightly more lighter note now.
For sure.
I know that you've been podcasting even before podcasting was a cool thing to do. um because now everyone's like, oh, I'll be a podcaster, I'll start a podcast show, and almost everyone is, including me. But you have been
You're doing
doing
so
it.
well, though.
I mean, hopefully, time will tell. But no, you've been doing this, I think, what, for the past 5, 6 years or more than that?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think I think my first podcast was News on the Go, which was back in 2017. No, 2016.
Oh,
2016.
wow.
Yeah. That was
Okay.
a daily, it was on SoundCloud, back when SoundCloud was cool. And it was called NOTG, News on the Go. And the reason
Okay.
why I launched it was because I didn't have anyone do an audio news. Like I was like, I want to catch up on what's happening in the world, but I don't have like time to read. Not time to
Right.
read, but just in transit. Like I just want to plug in and know what's happening in the world. But funnily enough, there was all these BBC podcasts of 1 hour long episodes. I said, is there
Oh,
something for like 5 minutes? But no. And I said, okay, let me create it. And it's also a part of learning, right? So then I used to spend 6 to 7 every morning for, I did this for a year and a half. So
oh,
every Monday
wow.
to Friday between 6 a.m. to 7 a.m., I used to summarize world news. So it used to be 6 to 6:30, read 3 newsletters, digest them, and not like go full in, but really read what's happening in Iran, what's happening in Siberia, what's happening in the US, and give me a whole context of the global geopolitical sense, knowing which
Wow.
country works with what governments. And I just started with, I think it was something June 2016. And when I go back to that episode, I'm just like, I don't know anything. And then when I'm talking in June 2017, I know so much more because every day I've been summarizing, learning, and then putting it out in 5 minutes. So that was super helpful. And that was podcasting. I just honestly wasn't even podcasting. I was taking a phone, like recording, editing, uploading it on SoundCloud, and then giving the link to people. I was literally spamming people on WhatsApp, like, hey, today's news, please listen. Like my family would be forced to listen. So I'll track my stats, like 10 plays, great, days made. So, and then from there, I went to, News on the Go itself got super popular. And then went to in conversation with Ashwin, where I started creeping up on people and asking them about their life on my show. It's a great way to just that was my second podcast, and then I got to Tech Talk with Ria and Ashwin, where it was just about learning about the cloud again from a self-learning mindset. And now I'm doing the Culture podcast, so that's with another friend. But yeah, I think podcasts have been more to answer my own learning, similar with
Hmm.
reading and writing. It's about, okay, I want to build this up as a skill. I want to. So news was just about learning about the world, and then and the best part about that News on the Go thing was it made me realize I can never know enough about the world because there's
Right.
just too much.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
then you
yeah.
become automatically like you're curious, but there's no end to this. So you're
Definitely.
just
Yeah,
learning
for
more and
sure.
more. So anyway, that's my whole podcasting thing. Yeah, I like it because a couple of friends as well from the company I used to work at was he was super helpful. Just speaking with me, one of the co-podcasters in the company. I just found him through the network. We connected. He told me about Audacity. There was this whole editing feel to the whole thing, and I like editing generally. I think it's super therapeutic. I
Oh my
take I
God,
take I,
same.
I take Sunday evenings out. In fact, this evening is just edit for the previous episode. It's a culture podcast which I'm working on. So I like editing. It's just a fun thing I do in the evenings. So that's a part of the whole podcasting thing I like. So if you don't like editing, then you're probably not going to take the effort to
Yeah,
podcast because it's too much work.
this is
you
very
know.
true. I'm learning as I go, but no, it's so weird because, and I don't know if this is because I've just started this, so I'm literally just 3 episodes in now. But I've found editing quite therapeutic. There's something very weirdly calming about it when I'm putting those audio tracks together. So when you said that, I was like, oh
Yeah.
my God, I relate so hard. I know what you're talking about. But there are times where I do get annoyed because I've just been listening to one section of that track 10 times to figure out how to fix it. And then finally, when it's out and people are like, oh, but we couldn't tell there was an issue. So it's a double-edged sword, but yeah, it's
No,
fun.
100%. It really is.
Yeah.
It can get annoying too, but it's when you have the time and when you actually chalk
Yeah,
out time for it, then you have fun with it.
for sure. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
For sure. But how did you even decide to get into audio at that time? Because I would assume it was still, I think it was still known as maybe audio blogs. I don't know if it was still officially known as, maybe it was known as podcast. I just wasn't aware of it. But,
Yeah,
how
yeah.
did you just decide to get into audio? Because it was a much more niche space at that time as compared to today, where it's become so popular and everyone's now listening to audio formats.
Yeah, it's funny how people think about popularity in different times. I
Right.
believe that was popular back then itself, and a lot of things I believe are popular now, but a lot of people believe popular over 2 years ago, and that's when you weren't on the front end of the wave,
Hmm.
right? And so
Right.
there's the adoption curve that people talk about. It's the I don't know which company released this, must have been like McKinsey or something. Early adopters, uh,
Right. Okay. Yeah, I
and
know.
then there's kind of the majority kind of falls in the 60%, and then there's the laggards which kind of fall on the technology later,
Yeah,
but
but
it's
yeah.
okay. Like me on the iPhone, like on a MacBook, I literally got a MacBook in May, so I'm a laggard on the Apple technology. So with audio, I think what I was always fascinated by audio. I like consuming content with audio. I'm into audiobooks.
Hmm.
As a kid, I can bet I had ADHD. Like I couldn't just sit still. I would always want to move. So audio was a great way to digest learning. So and also made me stay consistent with habits because reading through audio helped me actually read more books and read them better,
Okay.
as opposed to if I took a physical book and sat down. So audio is a more I'm comfortable with. It's a great place to just talk and not care. So
Right.
like if it's not clear or evident already, I like talking. So it's just one of those things that naturally fall in my comfort zone, and it just led to me naturally gravitating towards it as a media of consumption as well as creation. So kind of both of that happened together.
No, but yeah, actually, now when you talk about it, that does make sense. That's true. Things you may have considered popular back then are possibly not considered popular by other people. And then
Yeah,
suddenly,
actually, you're right. The word podcast wasn't so popular back then. I think it was more like I'm on SoundCloud, or I have a thing on SoundCloud. It's like a I don't know, an album. I'm not even sure. Like, yeah, it was just an
yeah,
audio bite. Correct. I used to call them audio bites. And then slowly, when Spotify and everybody else started talking
right.
podcasts, it became like more famous. But yeah, in between there was a phase when podcast word was popular, but Spotify still wasn't on it, and
Yeah.
that's when a lot of people got in, and you probably heard about it then too. So um
Yeah,
anyway.
because I think I only got into the whole listening to podcast space in during the pandemic in lockdown. I think that's when a lot of people got into it, and that's possibly one of the bigger reasons why it's blown up so much today. Because again, people have just been consuming content. People have been producing so much content, which is insane. And yeah, it's been a really interesting space, and I'm really curious to see, where podcasting goes in India, especially because it's so nascent here, I think. So yeah, definitely curious to see.
I would argue it is nascent, yes, but it's super. I feel like it's a great place to be, but it's also
Definitely.
saturated to a few
Oh, for
extents that
sure.
it has to evolve on a lot of other business elements in India.
For sure.
North America for sure is more mature, and India has a lot of opportunity.
Yeah.
But I don't believe by any means that you should not launch a podcast because that's the popular opinion that, oh, don't launch a podcast, oh, not another podcast. But hey, I think that that's again, like, what's your motivation behind the podcast? Why do you want to
Exactly.
launch it? Do you want listener base? Do you want to actually make money off of it? Then you really have to be solid on that, because yes,
Exactly.
it's saturated of that sense. But if you're doing it just to build a habit and to put content out there, then your metrics and your motivations are different. So stop listening to the market, because you're not playing to the market anyway.
No, that's very
That's
true.
that.
Yeah, that's very true. Because I think the other notion people have is that, oh, I'll start putting out a podcast and suddenly a network will pick me up and, it'll be all easy from there. But that's not really how it works. If, like you said, if you're not making it for the right reasons, then it's listeners are also, I think, very smart. Audiences are very smart. Like, they can pick up when something's authentic and when something's not. So it is very important, to do things for the right reasons. I completely agree with you there, for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
100%. Your why is important. Like, just knowing your why is important.
for sure, for sure. So I think we're now coming towards the end of this interview,
Yeah.
and we
Oh
always
no,
end.
I
Yes,
was
I
having
know this
fun.
is very sad, but we always end with these last two questions. The first one being, what are your aspirations in life? What are you looking forward to in the near or distant future? Could be anything.
Yeah, I'm actually really excited for Ashna to move here to Toronto, Canada. I'm by myself here, so she's hopefully gonna make it soon. But it's gonna take some time. So that's what I'm really looking forward to. The other thing, professionally, I feel like it's been a new job, so I'm excited to do more, do better, and kind of do well actually at the job. So that's something I'm excited to. It's been great so far. So touch wood, it just that is something. What else? Like, I feel like I'm always trying to explore, travel, uh, once in a while. So I do want to check out a new country. I'm really tired of the pandemic, and I feel like that's a very responsible thing to say, but I do want to get out and actually. I've been traveling. That's again. I've been responsible too, but I've seen a lot of the U.S. and I saw Doha this year, which was a super interesting country. But I actually want to check out another city or another country just for the heck of it, because I think travel is a great way to learn too. I love meditating on my travels. I love reading on my travels. So, usually coupling that up, or running even in a new city or a new country, it just lead or just going out with friends. Like, literally, it's been ages. So
Yeah.
I'm excited for December because a bunch of us are getting together. Actually, that is what I'm most looking forward to. So reverse the order. December is really exciting because I'm coming back home, and a lot of my friends, including yourself, are going to celebrate a lot of weddings
Including yours.
in the most responsible way we can. I'm trying to be politically correct because you have
Yes.
to.
But
But
also,
yeah, we will.
yes, for sure. But also for listeners who might be confused, Ashna is Ashwin's wife, who's also
Yes.
a friend of mine, and who I will also be interviewing later in this season because she's doing some amazing work as well. Um,
Oh yeah,
but
she told me
yes,
about that.
but yeah. Final question: what is a piece of advice or learning you'd like to share people? Something you wish people just knew more about? It could be like your own personal learning. It could even be professional or creative, anything.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I think it is just being kind to yourself. I think
Hmm.
that's important. And I know that's very cliched advice. A lot of people tell you that, and the reason behind that is, I think a lot of what we do is a consequence of the relationship we have with ourselves,
Right.
and that's so important. So how we treat ourselves is eventually representative of how we treat others. And so if we don't take enough time to treat ourselves right, then it really doesn't trickle down. So I feel like just treat yourself well, and yeah, you do want to do things, try to get them. And about reading, writing, whatever you want to do, right, whatever your passion, your calling is, that's the way I look at it. I'm not trying to impress anybody. I'm just trying to uh, do what I can do best, just to
Yeah.
impress myself. So wh- I think that's more controllable, and that's more in your control than um, a lot of non-controllables around you that if you start investing efforts into, then the outcomes of it are not as determinable as if you just back yourself up for them. So anyway, that's my yeah, that's helped me because uh, that's the lens I always try to take.
Yeah. No, and that is an important one. Because I
Yeah,
think, yeah,
earlier you become too self-critical, and then
true,
you stunt that growth, and then you don't actually get on the train. You're just
true.
on the last bit of the journey, and you're out, or you're in the first bit of the journey and you're out.
Yeah.
You're not traveling the whole journey. The whole journey is about realizing that kindness actually accelerates the process instead of stunting it, or at
That's
least allows the process to continue as opposed to just putting a
definitely.
stop to it. Yeah.
No,
So
I
take a break, get out, travel, walk, do whatever you can within your influence to be kind to yourself. So
Yes, I completely agree with that. Because I'm very self-critical myself, so I completely understand. It is important to, stop, look back, and say, "Hey, you know what? I think I've come really far. I've not done too bad. It's okay. Maybe yes, I could have done better, but it's fine. Let's just appreciate what we have around us." And I think that is extremely important. But yeah, with that, we have now come to the end of this interview.
wow, I
Thank you.
love that. Thank you, Sunita. Thank you for having me. It
No,
was such
thank
a
you
great
so much for
episode.
being here. It's been amazing. I'm so
I've given
glad.
you so much work in terms of editing. Like there's
That's
just a
okay.
bulk of content.
No, it's
uh,
okay. We'll figure it out. Guys, if you can figure the edits on this, let me know. If you can't, then that means I'm clearly doing better at
you're doing a good
editing.
job. Yeah, no, I listened to the first episode. It was really well done. So I'm very sure you've only gotten better. So.
Oh,
Uh,
we'll see. We'll see. Thank you so much. But no, thank you so much for being here, Ashwin. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me.
So that was my conversation with Ashwin Chhabria. I'm definitely checking out all his book recommendations and updating my reading list. I really enjoyed exchanging perspectives on vulnerability, writer's block, burnout, and showing more kindness to oneself. But more than anything, I just felt really good after this conversation. And I think you will too. Closing this episode with a blog piece written and narrated by Ashwin. I hope you enjoyed the show, and I'll see you next week with a new guest and a new chronicle to share. Talk soon!
The abundance mindset. Abundance is more of a mindset before it becomes an actuality. It comes more from the belief that we can all win. It comes from the belief that this is not a dog eat dog world. It comes from helping and supporting people who are doing good work around us. It comes from wishing well and knowing that we too will succeed in our time and right. It comes from the belief that win-win is possible. It comes from walking away in situations that make us feel excessively obligated. It comes from knowing that life has a funny yet legit way to reward our efforts. It comes from not having a pressure to appear kind with words and instead focus on doing kind things. The abundance mentality is ironically scarce, but when we realize that it trumps the scarcity mindset, there's no looking back.